Chapter 31.1. What are you two doing? Ah. Yaron, branch manager? Long time no see. Is this person the branch manager? Nice to meet you. When Suitg and Johan greeted, Yaron nodded with a bewildered expression. At a glance, they seemed to be playing Go. The situation was. At first glance, Suitg was clearly losing badly. Yaron was even more perplexed. After all, Suitg was an expert who had even won against a Go player under the Sultan. Since the branch manager is here, let's stop here. It's a shame, but it can't be helped. With those words, Suitg swept his hand across the board. Johan looked at Suitg as if he couldn't believe it. Suitg avoided eye contact and then walked away first. Is he always like this? No, not usually. But did you know each other from before? This is our first meeting today. Yaron slightly revised his opinion of Johan. Seeing how well he got along with Suitg, this Go player seemed to be quite an eccentric character as well. You can speak first, Suitg. Thank you. Since you've been gracious, allow me to explain the reason I came. I have heard of recent disturbances in the southeast. Johan looked puzzled. Disturbances in the southeast. Suitg kindly explained what Johan seemed unaware of. Recently, mercenaries have been pouring in from various places, and they have formed a rogue band. Their numbers have grown to over 100, and they've become a nightmare in the nearby forest. Travelers and merchants in the vicinity prefer to take detours. Naturally, Marseille City couldn't just stand by and watch. The magistrate and the city council unanimously decided to launch an expedition, and a mercenary group was hired with the city's gold. With over 500 mercenaries going into the forest for the expedition, it might take some time, but they will soon bring an end to it. Everyone in the city thought that way. It seems the expedition might fail. Yaron was surprised, but he didn't dismiss Suitlug's words casually. Suitg was a philosopher, sage, closely associated with the Kartana Merchant Guild's owner. If he said something like that, it had meaning. Why do you say that? The river and water have shown me the future. Johan found it bewildering. If he were the commander and a wizard came and said, he would have probably said. Shouldn't he provide a more plausible reason? But that alone was enough. Unlike Johan, people took magic and superstition much more seriously. I see. In that case, we should prepare. That's why I came here. It's a good thing. No. Can it really be done with that? Thank you for the visit. Do you happen to know why this is happening? I haven't seen that part. Understood. Suitg immediately stood up from his seat. It seemed like he was about to leave. Yaron cautiously said, If you don't mind, please stay a little longer. It's fine. The accommodations here are quite uncomfortable. There was no way the guild would provide Suitg, a wizard like him, with a shabby inn. Even though they were fit for nobles, the reaction wasn't due to the quality of the accommodations, it was clearly because of Suitlug's personality. Yaron's mind flashed for a moment. With the wit of a skilled merchant, he opened his mouth. Since it seems like you're looking for a suitable opponent, wouldn't it be better to stay here a little longer? Suitg looked hesitant. To be honest, calling him a would be a bit of a stretch of conscience. But it was true that the idea was tempting. Where else could one find such a rival? Yaron looked at Johan and gave a pleading look. It was a request for help. He had already learned and felt that helping a merchant meant receiving help in return. There was no reason to refuse. Why don't we stay a bit longer? All right. If you say so. Suitg seemed to regret his words immediately, his expression a complex mix of emotions. Still, he didn't seem to have any intention of taking his words back, as he was the first to stand up and leave. Left alone, Yaron said with a brightened face. Thank you, Sir Johan. It was nothing. I also enjoy matching wits with a worthy opponent. I appreciate your words even more then. If it's all right with you, could you stay not at the inn where you are currently staying, but at the mansion where Suitg resides? Johan smiled contentedly. What a profitable turn of events. I shall do so. Thank you very much. May I ask you something? Please do. Since Suitg has already made his prophecy and left, why do we need to keep him here any longer? Ah. Yaron smiled bitterly. It seemed the knight was not familiar with such matters. Suitlug's prophecies do not come easily. No matter how much we plead, he does not readily comply. Magic is not something to be used frivolously, after all. Johann was puzzled. Then what was the meaning of the prophecy Suitlik had given earlier? Was it a favor? Chapter 31.2. If he stays longer and is well treated, there might be a chance to receive more prophecies. It's a calculation on our part. Such opportunities are rare. Is a prophecy that significant? A good prophecy can change the fate of a whole guild. Even if uncertain, everyone sought prophecies about the future. Thanks to his prophecies, Suitlik had become an advisor to the Duke. Let's leave Suitlik's story at that and talk about you, Sir Johann. That would be appreciated. Sir Johann, we have a guess as to why you came to the guild. Had his shallow intent of making a stable income been seen through? Isn't this too harsh a rebuke? Ambition is not bad in itself. And if it's ambition in someone qualified, it's actually a virtue. Someone like Sir Johann certainly deserves to serve a worthy lord and receive his own fief. So you've seen through me. Caught off guard, Johann decided to play along. Being seen as an ambitious knight aiming for a territory seemed better than being thought of as someone just trying to make a quick buck. And honestly, the latter seemed too petty. We guessed right, then. Please forgive us for speaking so frankly. As merchants, we like to understand each other's true intentions. Yes. Sir, would you mind or feel reluctant to fight under our flag? Not at all, I wouldn't mind in the slightest. Yaron hummed in satisfaction. As Eldons had observed, Johann was indeed a knight worth joining hands with. His first impression had been favorable. Even as a knight, Johann had shown her respect. A younger knight might have acted arrogantly, trusting solely in his status. But Johann didn't. He knew his status but understood the situation. This flexibility was rare in other knights. By the grace of St. Ruoke, may this meeting be beneficial for both of us. I look forward to working with you, Sir Johann. I look forward to working with you as well. Johann was lost in thought. Back in the rural fiefdom, his primary goal was to establish his position, not to become a feudal lord. It seemed like an unattainable goal. However, hearing Jarn's words, it suddenly felt plausible. After all, becoming a feudal lord was simply a matter of catching the eye of a noble who would grant the land. With the help of the guild, gaining achievements and fame, who knows if such fortune might come. Won't you sit? Yes. Johann settled down at once. He was an assassin who had captured a grand wizard. Suitlik's face reddened then turned ashen. Wizardnim, shall I give you a break? I couldn't sleep well last night because of you. What did I do? Didn't you make the maid cry all night? I guess you heard. My apologies. The maid's seduction seemed like a ruse, and he tried to refuse, but the curiosity about her being a cat person was too much, especially her tail and ears. In the end, it was true that cat people had a weakness for their tails. I'll give you some good advice if you give me a break. Yes. Be careful with getting too involved with the guild. Is there a problem? Johann tensed up. Suitlik's words were not to be taken lightly. Wasn't he much more familiar with the guild? Is there a scheme within the guild? Scheme? The guild is transparent. They grasp what's profitable and let go of what's not. The issue is with you. Aren't you from the Empire? Yes. The Kartana Merchant Guild is anti-emperor. A couple of times may go unnoticed, but continually associating with them might label you or your family as anti-emperor. Be cautious and think big. I'm fully prepared for what I'm doing. Is that so? Yes. Then let's continue our game. Suitlik, feeling embarrassed, said no more. An awkward silence followed. Johann spoke to lighten the mood. This mansion is a really nice place. Skilled servants, beautifully decorated courtyards and rooms, and the meals served at every meal were just a bonus. Seeing the treatment Suitlik received made Johann envy the life of a wizard. It was once a noble's residence. Oh, whose was it? Who remembers such details? Besides, I dislike this mansion. I can't hear the sound of the river. The only thing I like here is this pet. Suitlik tried to pet Karamaf, but the wolf shrank away, displeased. But isn't the name a bit unlucky? Well, a bit of a sinister name keeps the enemies at bay, doesn't it? That's true. While they were chatting, a messenger arrived at the mansion with urgent news. Panting, he drank a glass of water and delivered his message. The expedition has failed. Johan Nim, the branch manager, is looking for you. The prophecy has come true. Suituk commented nonchalantly. Unknown to Suituk, Johan was looking at him with an impressed yet irreverent gaze. Chapter 32. Let's go together. Will you be all right? In what sense do you ask? I'm asking if you're okay with going on a punitive expedition. Johan was also perceptive. After agreeing to cooperate with the company, the fact that they were calling him following the failure of the punitive expedition meant that there was use for a night. It seemed that he would cooperate with the punitive expedition in the name of the company. Do I look like it's my first time in a punitive force? I can take care of myself. Since I prophesied it, I should take responsibility. In the courtyard, Suilg's slave had finished preparing for departure. Geoffrey, with equal speed, quickly saddled a horse. It seemed he felt a sense of urgency because of the slaves under Suilg's command. The city of Marseille was run by an elected magistrate and other members of the council. Here, the council members were not ordinary city citizens but rather powerful people composed of the city's guilds and nobility. Yaron, the branch manager of the company, was naturally a member of the council. This meant that he naturally had to participate in the response to the failure of the punitive expedition. However, Yaron was relaxed. He had prepared after hearing Suitlug's prophecy. He had stockpiled goods that would increase in price due to road blockages and had mercenaries ready. Fortunately, it wasn't him who had recommended the failed mercenary group. In this situation, there was nothing to lose and only gain. It was the happiest time for a merchant. Upon hearing the magistrate's words, the council members nodded. Whether they liked it or not, they agreed with the magistrate. The matter had to be resolved quickly. Council members who had hoped to escape by paying the defense tax pursed their lips. The magistrate had preemptively blocked this route. Hiring mediocre people was easy, but not for this situation. Considering the magistrate's dignity, they had to hire proper mercenaries. Yaron took this opportunity to start his business. Paying the defense tax and escaping was not an option, but joining forces with other council members to hire mercenaries was acceptable. Yaron charged a considerable sum to a few council members and included their names. As you instructed, Sir Johan. The three were sold as laborious. And Gamson was executed. Johan nodded. The three men caught from the town were of no concern, but Gamson was the one who had led the operation directly. A definite punishment was necessary. Gamson, beaten by the mercenaries, was executed in the name of the company before he could regain consciousness. Johan accepted a purse offered by Yaron. It wasn't necessary to reward those mercenaries, but as per your instruction, Sir Johan, I shared some silver with them. One is rewarded by God for having a merciful heart. As Johan made a joking remark, Yaron's expression became subtle while Suitl beside them found it absurd. What use was such talk in front of a merchant? Mercy? Do you not know that woman's blood was golden? It was just a joke. Don't joke with someone who can't take it. While the two bantered, Yaron cleared his throat to draw attention. So Johan, you said you wouldn't mind fighting under the company's flag. Do you still stand by that decision? Yes. A force is being assembled in the city to hunt down a group of rogues. We plan to hire mercenaries and join. Please participate with us. Johan nodded. He had been prepared for this from the beginning. Yaron, with a tense expression, swallowed and spoke. This next request was a bit daunting for her. And we would like you to follow the command of our mercenary captain. I will do so. Yaron was momentarily startled, then regained his composure. He was taken aback by how easily Johan agreed. A knight from a noble family would not easily accept the command of a mercenary, no matter the circumstance. It was a matter of knightly pride. But Johan had accepted it too easily. To Yaron, Johan's calm expression started to feel like a mask worn by an enigmatic creature. Are you sure that's all right? It's unusual for a knight to follow a mercenary's command. If one receives something, one must give something in return. I've decided to think about pride later. Suitl thought disdainfully of the people of Johan's former household. To train such a man as a knight. Well, it must have been due to his size. The dwarfs of the Dwarf Mountains were a beloved race of mercenaries due to their sturdy and robust physiques, along with their race's characteristic stubbornness. One such group was a band of dwarf mercenaries under the Kartana Merchant Guild. For this expedition, 5 units of 10 dwarfs each and a captain of 100 men had arrived in Marseille. Johann looked at the dwarfs with wonder. Their appearance, with shields large enough to cover half their bodies and carrying huge axes on their backs, seemed like small, solid walls in motion. "I am Captain Kumal. It's a pleasure to meet you, Sir Johann." A burly dwarf with a long, braided red beard greeted him respectfully. He had heard about Johann before arriving. The branch manager, not one to speak idly, agreed to this, but as a captain, he couldn't help but be concerned. "I look forward to working with you. Sir Johann, please speak freely. Won't that undermine your authority in front of your subordinates? My men won't doubt my authority just because the knight speaks casually. In fact, it makes me more uncomfortable." "Then let it be so." At Johann's words, the dwarf nodded in bewilderment. He had worried about a clash of egos, but this was beyond his expectations. "I count on you, Suitlignim." "Yes, I'm counting on you too." Johann and Suit joined the dwarfs. Meanwhile, mercenaries began gathering at a camping site near the city. City guards and newly hired mercenaries would be the main force of this expedition. The force was approximately 800 strong, qualitatively much better than the previous Oak Tree mercenary group. Moreover, the Calamity Society's preparations were far from over. St. Aina Holy Knight's Order and St. Galanto Holy Knight's Order. Geoffrey exclaimed in surprise upon seeing the flags of the arriving paladins. The Holy Knight's Order, a group of devotees who, instead of living in seclusion, took up arms to fulfill the will of their deity. Strictly speaking, they were not noble-born knights but devotees, yet no one underestimated them. The paladins, honing their skills within the monastery, were as formidable as well-trained knights. "Are they famous?" "Yes, my lord. Both are renowned orders in this region. The St. Aina Holy Knight's Order notably defeated a troll. About 20 female devotees arrived, followed by 30 male devotees. St. Aina Holy Knight's Order comprised only women, while St. Galanto Holy Knight's Order admitted only men. They exchanged greetings with a flicker of motion and then took their places in an orderly fashion on opposite sides. The noisy mercenaries fell silent and hesitant in the presence of the Holy Knight's Order. They look competent in both arms and skills. They are unmounted. "Nothing much compared to you, master." He. Geoffrey was desperately flattering, driven by his anxiety. Already needing to prove his worth, Geoffrey found himself stuck at Suitlug's mansion when Johann was there. The servants at Suitlug's mansion left Geoffrey with no opportunity to act. Skill is not determined by the presence of a horse. "Ah. Yes." Geoffrey despaired, feeling he had made another misstep. Oblivious to Geoffrey's desperate heart, Johann surveyed the paladins. They were not mounted but were well armed, a stark contrast to the mercenaries who were merely wrapped in leather armor with a few chains. "Look, the knights are coming." "From the monastery again?" "No. Knights like yourself." Suitlug pointed in the opposite direction. A group of about 30, bearing a family crest, was approaching. Identifying the knights was easy. The 3 in front were heavily armed and mounted, while the others lightly armed and carrying baggage, leading the horses. "Sent by Count Bartok, it seems." Why would the Count send them to a city that's not his? Why indeed? Suitlug drew a circle indifferently. It meant that sending knights under one's command cost money, so the Count must have struck a significant deal with the city. Unlike the monastery knights, these approached the fiefdom slowly and showily. It was quite irritating. Watching them, Johann thought. City guards captain, leaders of the mercenaries, Holy Knight's Order, real knights. The command structure was already making him dizzy. What's wrong? I was thinking about who will command all these gathered. Worrying about trivial things. The mercenaries will follow their captain, the Holy Knight's Order will manage themselves, and the knights will take care of themselves. Wouldn't it be easier if the command structure was unified? Wouldn't it be convenient to fly in the sky? Why don't you fly? Don't worry. The enemies will be just as disjointed. Suitlug was unfazed by the disorganized nature of the gathered groups. It was normal for him. From Johann's perspective, however, such chaos was unprecedented. An army should have a more orderly command structure. Kill if seen, chase if fled, and stop if commanded. Johann planned to work only as much as he was paid for in this campaign. For Empire silver coins a day seemed fair enough. Chapter 33. Unfortunately, the captain of the guards was not in a position to be unconcerned like Johann. He had to issue orders while appeasing the incoming mercenary captains to prevent their dissatisfaction, request politely from the people of the Holy Knight's Order, and grovel to the knight sent by Count Bartok. Although he had gained experience from a long stay in the city, he was ultimately a mercenary by origin. He had no way to resolve this situation. "What will your honors do?" "Report to us if you see the enemy. We will step in if necessary." "Yes, understood." With those words, the knights withdrew. They seemed to have no intention of mingling or conversing with the mercenary captains. It was a role of a superior, but it couldn't be helped. The paladins of "We will coordinate and act in concert with the soldiers." At these reassuring words, the captain of the guards was relieved. He might not be able to command the paladins of the Holy Knight's Order, but their willingness to coordinate and act together was something. The paladins from St. Galanto Holy Knight's Order also. "We will do the same." "Thank you. This makes things easier. With esteemed knights and paladins present, those rogue gangs will soon be captured and dealt with." The camp of the punitive four seemed like chaos itself to Johann. The gathered mercenaries were grouped separately by their own units or companies. There was no uniformity or coordinated movement among them. Over a dozen merchants moved in and out of the camp with their workers, selling various meals, equipment, and necessities to the mercenaries. Quite a disciplined force. The captain of the guards is a renowned figure. With his high reputation among mercenaries, there should be no problem in managing them. At the words of the dwarf Kumal, Suetug nodded in agreement. Johann felt like the only sane person among fools. Even though he knew intellectually that this was the best approach, adapting was another matter. Johann clicked his tongue in frustration. The location of the Crimson Iron Mercenary Company was among the better spots in the camp. It was due to the names of Kartana Merchant Guild and Crimson Iron Mercenary Company, but also because of Johann and Suetg. As a result, while other mercenaries were busy setting up camp and standing guard, Johann and Suetg could rest comfortably. "Is this the place of Sir Johann and the philosopher of Ipel River, Suetg?" a well-dressed servant asked cautiously. Suetg frowned and replied, "I am Suetg. What is it?" "My lord, Sir Gustav, wishes to host you both." "All right. We'll come soon." After the servant left, Suetg spat out. Johann asked in surprise, "Do you have any grievances? What knights are good at is upsetting wizards? Then why did you accept?" One has to consider the dignity of the Count Bartok. A wizard friendly with nobles receives noble treatment, but a wizard not friendly with nobles is more dangerous than a slave. It's not good to incur the wrath of nobles. The members and knights of the Holy Knight's Order waited comfortably inside the camp. They had no need to go out for camping or guard duty. However, the way the two of them stayed was the complete opposite. The camping site of the Holy Knight's Order was so modest that it had less luggage than the mercenaries, but the knights' tents were decorated with fabrics and flags of various brilliant colors. It seemed to have already started. From inside, there was a loud laughter and light spreading out. Seeing this, Suetg shook his head. Those without money are making a fuss. The virtue of the nobility was not modesty but luxury. The more lavishly they could indulge in luxury, the larger the vessel of that nobleman could be shown. The problem was that these knights were not wealthy enough to afford such luxury. Don't they have a fiefdom? A knight with a fiefdom? They might have received the title but not the fiefdom. If they had a fiefdom, they wouldn't have come to such a place. Even if they had a knighting ceremony and received a title, it didn't necessarily come with a fiefdom. To receive a fiefdom, one had to accomplish a certain amount of merit. Probably, they were spending more money than they earned, just to maintain their prestige. Thanks to that, they will eat and drink well. With someone else's money. Must be nice to be so carefree. Let's see what kind of reaction they have. Suetg grumbled and went inside. However, Johann's words were not wrong. Instead of a thick mercenary-style soup of unidentified ingredients, they had noble-style soup made with properly fried chicken divided by parts and neatly cooked with spices, along with roast pigeon, wild boar, goose, and various other animals. Onions, garlic, potatoes, etc. were naturally cooked alongside, served with soft white bread and well-ripened cheeses. Rolling around on the table. The servants and slaves brought by the knights shone with anticipation in their eyes. While the elf knights indulged in wine and meat, engaging in excessive drinking and eating, the paladins were having a remarkably modest meal. A little boiled potato with a little salt. That was all they had for their meal. Johann looked disgusted. He would have at least eaten the soft bread that he usually couldn't have. The philosopher of Ipel River is here, surely our battle will be blessed with good fortune. An elf shouted loudly. Then, everyone's gaze inside turned to them. Suetlik and Johann briefly greeted and sat down. Johann wanted to tear into some expensive meat dish after a long time, but the knights wouldn't leave him alone. Philosopher, won't you predict our future? Suetlik was expressionless, but Johann knew that Suetlik was getting angry. I'm sorry. Magic isn't something that can be used so easily. Oh well. It can't be helped. It's fine. After all, there's only one outcome. The rogues will all be torn to death. The elf knight said this and, caught up in the excitement, threw his cup to the ground. His party clapped and stomped their feet. Johann quietly ate the food in the meantime. Is there anything as reliable and straightforward as a well-sharpened sword? More dependable than the unpredictable and fickle magic. Even the gods in the heavens. Oh, I apologize. Philosopher, I did not mean to insult you. That's all right. Johann marveled at the knight's eloquence as he ate his meat, mocking magic while summoning a wizard. What was more surprising was that they didn't particularly bear any grudge or hostility against Suetlik. They genuinely believed that. Suetlik, a philosopher acquainted with Count Bartok, naturally had no reason to be insulted. The knight's treatment was a matter of duty, but their mistrust and skepticism towards magic made them speak their minds bluntly. Johann understood why Suetlik detested the knight's treatment. So Johann of the Yates family. As an arrow flew towards him, Johann clicked his tongue. He thought it would end after talking with Suetlik, who had summoned him. How should one handle Johann's temper? It's truly a pleasure to meet an honorable noble in this filthy battlefield filled only with mercenaries and rogues. You must feel the same, right? Ah, certainly. Johann responded casually, but the elven knight seemed to take a liking to him more than he expected. Essentially, Johann had an appearance that knights would find appealing. An elf knight named Leon poured strong wine into a glass, overflowing, and said, I heard you're working under the banner of a company. To work under such greedy people, you must feel indignant. I've been swallowing that bitter feeling. Yes. I understand that feeling. Merchants are blinded by gold, scraping it together like a rake, regardless of what it takes. Do you know how greedy they are? Once you're in debt, they pounce like a possessed son of a bitches. The knights had a different perspective than Johann. Instead of, it was Leon. Even so, isn't it shameful for a knight to fight under the banner of a company? Don't talk nonsense, Lauren. Once those greedy merchants decide to go after you, you can't escape until you give them an arm. The elf knight known as Leon believed Johann was fighting under the company's banner because of debt. Johann, who voluntarily joined for good meals, remained silent. Right, sir. Will you join us in the charge tomorrow? I plan to be at the forefront as soon as the scouts report. I have to lead the company's mercenaries, so it's impossible. That's unfortunate. Missing such an opportunity as a knight. Johann had no intention of charging ahead with unfamiliar knights, leaving his mercenaries behind. While knights seek glory and achievements, it wasn't necessarily only at the forefront. At this time, Johann didn't fully grasp what it meant for the knights to. The mercenaries sent out for reconnaissance have discovered an enemy encampment. The numbers appear to be around 50 or so. Understood. We must prepare to advance our soldiers. Before the captain of the guard could gather the warriors present, the sound of a loud trumpet emanated from the knights' encampment. Elven knights, heavily armed with chainmail, helmets, lances, and long swords, along with their well-armed but lesser-equipped servants and slaves, were readying for a charge, mounted on their horses. The mounted ones in front, those leading spare horses behind. The elven knights proceeded, pulling their horses forward, as the mercenaries looked on. The knights swiftly broke through the encampments and moved forward effortlessly. The scouts had heard and prepared before even reporting to the captain. Cooperation with mercenaries? Such notions held no meaning for the knights. It was solely about their bravery and their achievements. But, Captain, they're moving out ahead. It's not like they'd listen if we tried to stop them. Hurry and get the mercenaries ready. We must sweep them up before they flee further. The knights' eagerness to charge ahead without waiting for preparations was not surprising. It wasn't because the knights were foolish. They knew well enough that fighting together was advantageous. They simply chose not to. Waiting for the mercenaries to fight together would be akin to declaring their own weakness. For those born and trained as knights, this mindset and value system was absolute. Isn't it dangerous? It's deep in the forest, after all. Dangerous? With just those knights, the rogues inside can be easily subdued. Suitlig's words were no exaggeration. Certainly, if hundreds of mercenaries united against the knights, it wouldn't be easy for them. But the mercenaries were far from united. Facing the knights' fierce assault, they would think first of abandoning their comrades and fleeing rather than banding together. The knights' fissomeness lay in such small-scale battles. Their ferocious combat capabilities unmatched by similar numbers of mercenaries. Before long, a messenger sent by the knights arrived. Blood was smeared on his cheek and clothes. My lords and the honourable sir knights have attacked the encampment and slaughtered all the rogues inside. Chapter 34.1. Understood. What did the lords decide to do? They said they will interrogate them and then decide. Understood. Tell them I will come as soon as possible. Suitlig made a look as if to say. Whether surrounded by forest or whatever, facing knights with just a few dozen mercenaries was absolutely impossible. The captain of the guard shouted, gathering the captains of the mercenaries. Since the knights had already gone ahead and were causing trouble, they also had to hurry. Honestly, the knights aren't fools, they'll handle it well. But what if they're late? What would they hear then? It would be easier if the Sir Knights just swept them all away. I'm afraid to say that, it seems like we would get an earful for that. Aren't the preparations complete yet? They say it's all ready now. Upon hearing the adjutant's report, the captain of the guard nodded. The plan of subjugation was simple. Sweep through the nearby forest, destroying all possible camping sites, and kill any mercenary or rogue they encounter. It was a simple but effective method. Since they had more numbers and better quality of troops, there was no need for complicated tactics. The only reason these bands of rogues held out was because of the vast forest. If they destroyed all supplies and camping grounds, the mercenaries would be finished. Would these mercenaries, gathered for personal gain, regroup after a retreat? They would just scatter. Do you think they'll run or fight? Maybe they'll fight at least once, right? After all that, they won't just disband. Having betrayed the city and turned into a band of rogues, the mercenary captain had to produce results. Otherwise, he would be hanged by the angry mercenaries. Are you okay after drinking so much? The wine? Good wine is like medicine. At Johann's words, Suitlig made a disbelieving face. The elf knights and Johann had really drunk like madmen. Seeing Johann drink well, the elf knight seemed excited and kept pouring more. Suitlig gulped down some cold water. Johann, while preparing for the march, asked, "What conditions are needed to see the future?" "Why? Do you want me to predict your future?" "Hava. How could I ask for that? I was just wondering if someone like Suitlig could foresee and avoid a disadvantageous future. To see the future, a few conditions are necessary. When water wants to tell me the future, when my life is in great danger, and most importantly, when I haven't overdrunk the previous night. Sounds plausible. Why suddenly talk about the future? There must be a reason. The mercenaries who betrayed the city and turned into a band of rogues wouldn't have done it without reason. I was wondering if there's something more to it. Don't overestimate those mercenary fools. Like I said, they're like beasts. They eat when hungry, drink when thirsty. They resort to thievery when out of money. Probably thought they could extort more after receiving the down payment. With the empire in turmoil, they'd flee there and Marcel couldn't do anything. Blocking the path to the city meant that the city would have no choice but to negotiate. It would be much more profitable than the money to hire the mercenaries. If the Oak Tree mercenary group and band of rogues were mistaken about anything, it was that the magistrate of Marcel was not an easy person. The mercenaries misjudged the person. In other cities, maybe, but here the magistrate is not so soft to fall for such tactics. They thought blocking the road would lead to negotiations, but the magistrate's choice to hire twice as many troops for a counterattack was indeed threatening. However, Johann felt strangely uneasy. Could the opponent have some other plan in mind? The sight of the burning fiefdom was horrific. The mercenaries who couldn't escape in time were slaughtered right there. Unlucky merchants who came to the fiefdom to make some money, along with laborers and prostitutes, were also killed. As the knights charged, shouting for glory, 1/3 of the mercenaries in the fiefdom panicked and fled, abandoning their weapons. Another third shouted, while the remaining third tried to fight, grasping their weapons. The elf knights indiscriminately wiped out the mercenaries. Since the opponents were not nobles, there was no reason to accept their surrender. Shoo, 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 shoo. A servant pointed a knife at the throat of a surviving female mercenary. You're not alone, are you? Where are the others? Over there, at the stream to the east, waiting to emerge if anyone passes by on the road. Before she could finish speaking, the servant slit the mercenary's throat with a dagger. It was a skill he had honed following the knights. Servants or slaves accompanying knights often became skilled soldiers. Did you find out? Yes. It seems they are waiting at the eastern stream. Annoying bugs, scattered here and there. One of the knights frowned. The horses seem tired, let's switch mounts. We need to attack before they hear the commotion and flee. None of the approximately 30 members of the party were injured. Even though the mercenaries were caught by surprise, the disparity in strength was immense. Chapter 34.2. Johann clicked his tongue at the sight of the thoroughly destroyed and burned fiefdom. Those who had been so friendly to him, a fellow knight, had caused this havoc and left. Moreover, they had already advanced to the next target. So Johann, could you possibly assist the knights of the St. Aina Holy Knights Order? The captain of the guards decided to change his plans when the knights did not wait and continued forward. He thought it better to send a few swift members to assist. It seemed like a good opportunity to avoid unnecessary trouble. Seeing a good opportunity, Johann nodded. Participating in the suppression under the banner of the guild, he didn't rampage like the crazed elf knights but saw it as a chance to earn merit. Let's do that. Johann decided to leave Jeffrey behind with the group. It didn't seem dangerous enough to bring along another person. Jeffrey, unsure whether to be relieved for his safety or worried about being sold off as a laborer, wore a complicated expression. Then, Suet Lignim. I entrust this to you. What's there to entrust? The dwarfs will handle the fight. Just make sure to be careful. Despite carrying iron shields and loads on their backs and holding weapons in their hands, the women of the St. Aina Holy Knights Order did not slow down compared to Johann on horseback. They were far more disciplined than the mercenaries. Leading them was Captain Valian, a monastic priestess. She was tall enough to reach Johann's nose, with a well-trained body that was evident even under her ample monastic robes. In contrast, her youthful face with silver hair was quite incongruous. The first words she spoke after the greeting were as follows. So Johann, what do you think of God? Taken aback by the unexpected question, Johann was perplexed. The churches in this world were similar to those on Earth but not exactly the same. He had learned quite a bit from Priest Valberga, but he wasn't knowledgeable enough to discuss theology. I do not think it's my place to speak on such matters. That's a humble statement. Valian was expressionless, but Johann could feel that she was satisfied with his answer. He was slightly bewildered. Did he give the right response? The knights from the Bartok family were indulging in sins. Gluttony, though pleasing to the tongue, corrupts the soul. It leads to pride. Johann, who had been eating and drinking merrily with the elf knights, felt a bit guilty. He quickly changed the subject. In that regard, the clerics are indeed leading a devout life. I have always respected that. Would you consider joining the monastery? I have family duties, so that might be difficult. Valian nodded, understanding that such reasons were unavoidable. Throughout the walk, Johann, not wanting to discuss theology and frugality, posed another question. I heard the St. Aina Holy Knights Order had encountered trolls. I'd like to hear about how you dealt with them. So Johann, please, let's not speak of trolls. There is a saying that speaking of trolls brings them to life. In a world where magic exists, superstitions were unsettling to completely dismiss. So, he decided not to speak of trolls. Instead, Johann inquired about how the Holy Knights Order clerics lived, their daily routine, and if they had any discomforts. The clerics seemed intrigued by such questions. Johann was indeed different from other knights. Such questions were never posed by knights. Common questions from knights were about their achievements, the beauty of their new swords, or how much God loved them. The clerics responded kindly. There are swordsmanship techniques unique to the Holy Knights Order. We practice and spar in our free time. Since retired knights often joined the monastery, the Holy Knights Order's swordsmanship was far from weak. They dedicated less time to scripture and more to honing their skills. Among these techniques were secret visions not disclosed to the outside, similar to what Johann had learned from Kegel. Suddenly, Johann became interested. How do these paladins fight? Then, from afar, the sound of galloping horses approached rapidly. It was the sound of someone riding a horse at full speed. Johann and the clerics immediately stopped and grabbed their weapons. "Help us!" Bursting through the bushes was a servant who accompanied the elf knights. He was hanging onto the horse, his face half dazed. He clearly looked severely distressed. What happened? "Alert! Alert! My lord has been attacked by a troll." "No." Johann glanced at Valian for a moment. Fortunately, it seemed Valian did not blame Johann. "Please help us." "Understood. You go back to the main force and ask for help. I will go as I am to aid them." "Thank you." After hearing the details of the location and situation from the servant, Johann looked at Valian. Since the troll had already appeared, there was no need to hold back words. They had to ask those who had hunted before. "Is the troll faster or slower than a horse?" "Slower than a horse, but—" "Alert! Alert! Please stop!" As Johann was about to drive the horse away, Valian cried out in panic. Hunting a troll wasn't like hunting a wild beast by just running and catching it. The troll's skin was tough and its regenerative powers were even more tenacious, requiring full preparation. "Why?" "To capture the troll, we need to prepare. Please wait until we are ready with." One of its weaknesses was fire, especially a relentless fire that wouldn't easily extinguish. Hearing Valian's words, Johann thought to himself. Chapter 35.1. Currently, the Saint Aina Holy Knights Order seemed seriously intent on risking their lives in a decisive battle against the troll. It was natural for them, who regarded monster subjugation as a divine mission. However, Johann did not really have such intentions. Of course, he had feasted grandly with the elf knights and participated in the subjugation, so he would go to the rescue, but he had no intention of risking his life in a life-or-death struggle. Since he was faster than the troll, he just needed to turn his horse around and retreat. That was the reason he had asked. The elf knights would undoubtedly rush to capture the monster at the sight of it, but Johann did not entertain such thoughts. If he could capture it, he would; if not, it couldn't be helped. A flexible knight. In this situation, the best course was to rescue the elf knights and then escape without fighting the troll. It was better to move quickly, as there was nothing to gain if the elf knights died. No. That would be too late. "I'll go ahead, and you follow as soon as you're ready." "Yes, sir." Johann pretended not to hear and spurred his horse on. Karamaf growled beside him, keeping pace with the horse. Meanwhile, the main force was steadily advancing into the forest. There were a few minor skirmishes with what seemed to be scouts and rogues, but no major battles. Therefore, when the scouts returned with their reports, the captain of the guard was taken aback. "They're waiting in ambush." "Yes. They've gathered and are ready to fight." The captain of the guards was surprised by the report that several hundred mercenaries and rogues had formed ranks, though it was more like just standing in line, and were ready to fight. Honestly, he had thought they would just collapse. "What did I tell you? I said the rogues would fight at least once. The enemy's mercenary captain's neck is on the line. It's noisy. Tell the mercenary unit to get ready to fight." After kicking the smug adjutant in the buttocks, the captain of the guards prepared for battle. Although hundreds had gathered, they were reduced in number due to several skirmishes. In both numbers and quality, the punitive force held the advantage. "Captain, the wizard has arrived." The captain was startled by Suitl's sudden arrival and saluted with a disciplined posture. "What brings you here?" "I heard that a group of rogues is waiting in ambush." "Did I hear correctly?" "Yes, that's correct." "Can you spare some reserves and leave them behind?" "Yes." Even without the Crimson Iron Mercenary Company or the St. Galanto Holy Knights Order, that's enough power to win. The captain was taken aback by the sudden suggestion. Indeed, given the state of the enemies, the dwarfs and paladins could remain in reserve. They were not holed up in a fortress or castle but openly prepared to fight in a clearing. There was more than enough strength to overwhelm them from the front. "That's true, but may I ask why?" Did you foresee the future?" You could say it's similar. Think of it as an old man's concern. I couldn't refuse Suitlug's proposal. Although he was speaking politely now, if Suitlug used his authority, the captain of the guards had no choice but to comply. It's basic city life etiquette to respond kindly when spoken to nicely. The captain, well versed in city ways, obviously knew this. Understood. I'll place the 2 in reserve. Those mercenaries hoping for an easy job will surely grumble. I'm sorry about this. No, it's not a difficult request at all. The reserves could be called into battle at any time. It wasn't an unreasonable request. Crossbowmen to the front. Special rewards for those who distinguish themselves in battle. Forward. Those who flee will have their heads cut off. Don't even think about trickery. A fierce shout erupted among the mercenaries. It was the cry of those soon to be led into battle. Not all mercenaries were the same, some were new, some were cowards. It was the role of other mercenaries to grab these types and push them into battle. Excuse me, Wizard Nim. Why did you ask to place the 2 at the back? It's just unnecessary worry. Geoffrey asked cautiously. Fortunately, Suitlug didn't turn him into a frog in anger. I've been bothered since your master said something. Don't worry. It'll be fine. Their loud approach was unmistakable. Drumbeats and battle cries erupted from the other side. As they came within sight, arrows flew back and forth. Most used crossbows, with only a few mercenaries using bows. Arrows whistled through the air, embedding themselves in each camp. A few unlucky ones, hit by arrows that flew between shields, fell. But the mercenaries didn't stop. They continued to advance silently. The punitive forces' morale improved, seeing their larger numbers and longer formation. Jokes even emerged among the more relaxed veterans. Anyone want to bet if I hit that guy or not? The captain felt relieved, as it seemed the rogues would be easily defeated. Then a disheveled knight servant arrived. A troll. Send reinforcements quickly. My lord is in danger. It's impossible now. Look, those retreating are losing. How can we pull out mercenaries in this situation? The captain sharply rebuked him. The servant had no response and hesitated. Didn't Sir Johann and the St. Aina Holy Knights order paladins go? Yes, they went to help, but I'm afraid that force should be enough. Sending mediocre mercenaries against a troll won't make a difference. But the servant acted like a noble when his master, the knight, was around, but without him, he was nothing. And now, the captain couldn't back down either. It was time to fight, but a troll, what an annoyance. You. It was clear they only thought of their own fame and achievements. The thought made him angrily boil over. Understood. I will wait until the fight is over. A wise decision. Suitlug, who was listening nearby, exclaimed in surprise. Geoffrey, puzzled, asked. Why is that, sir? Indeed, your master seems to be blessed with fortune. It's clear that the brave are looked after by the gods. Though the troll is known as our night slayer, a monster, fortunately, your master has an elixir that's effective against trolls. Suitlug looked pleased. A gift given without much thought had returned in this manner. Was this also a revelation? Chapter 35.2. Karamath. You're also considered a monster, can you handle a troll? Karamath expressed his opinion simply and briefly. It meant he was unwilling. Can you at least distract it? Karamath nodded confidently. Johann said with a relieved expression. Go and draw its attention, but don't engage too much. If it gets dangerous, you can retreat. We never planned to risk our lives anyway. Karamath, with a keen sense of smell, was leading the way remarkably well. Although a servant had given directions, they would have wandered more without Karamath. Upon closer examination, the troll's skin was much tougher than expected. Not only that, the thick skin coupled with the tough muscles and fat underneath formed a dense armor layer. Even a sharply honed longsword, when swung, would only slightly penetrate the muscles before stopping. This meant that the knight's swordsmanship might not be very effective. Moreover, such wounds would quickly heal. Would it be different if cut with the? It's not a good place to pour oil on the sword and set it on fire. Perhaps we have no choice but to push through with brute force. If thrown hard enough, a spear might penetrate somewhat. Better than a sword. Even with regenerative abilities, a spear lodged in the body would not be easily removed. Of course, this was a plan that only Johann, confident in his extraordinary strength, could consider. The wolf growled as if frustrated. The elf knights gazed at the troll with mesmerized eyes. The Night Slayer, the troll. Even when they heard such a nickname, they vividly remembered scoffing. There's only one. Missing this would be a disgrace to knights. Surround and capture it. Keep shooting bolts to confuse it. The knights weren't fools either. Even if not trolls, they had experience in capturing other monsters. After surrounding it with their subordinates, flooding it with bolts from all sides would inevitably panic and fluster any monster. Then, it would be the knight's turn. They knew about the troll's remarkable regenerative ability, but beheading would render that useless. As the creature floundered, the knight swiftly prepared to strike at its neck. However, the beast, it's coming this way. It's coming this way. The bolts were too weak to dismay the troll. Unscathed, the troll sneered and charged at the crossbowman. The encirclement quickly collapsed amidst screams. From then on, it was not a fight but a struggle for survival. Realizing the elf knights were the leaders, the troll ignored the others and doggedly pursued only 3. It was determined not to give them a chance to escape on their tied-up horses. The elf knights had to jump and roll with curses, as the troll, seemingly 1.5 times the size of a large soldier, swung its massive club, making defense impossible. Fortunately, one of the 3 elf knights continually distracted the troll, maintaining a precarious balance. All 3 were acutely aware of it. If even one of them fell, the others would be killed by the troll. It was a shameful situation for knights, but all they could hope for was reinforcement. And then, Johann arrived. Riding a warhorse and gallantly leaping through the bushes, Johann's arrival on the battlefield was the epitome of an honorable knight. Of course, he was contemplating whether to flee alone or with the knights. Chapter 36.1. Alert! Before Johann could make a decision, one of his fallen subordinates, seeing Johann, urgently shouted. Unlike the disoriented elf knights, they seemed relatively at ease. Johann, realizing he was discovered, inwardly clicked his tongue. Now that it's come to this, leaving them be would only complicate matters unless all the personnel here were killed. The 3 elf knights were arrogant and greedy, but not cowards. They didn't think of running away in the face of the enemy. If only they had run away, it would have been easier for both parties. Johann, on his horse, aimed his spear at the troll. Its large size made it an easy target. The troll, still preoccupied with the elf knight, didn't notice Johann. The spear, infused with Johann's strength, trembled. It seemed fragile, as if it might break. Johann, having aimed, swiftly threw the spear. The sound of it cutting through the air startled the troll, who turned its head in surprise. But it was too late to react. The spear, like shot from a ballista, pierced the troll's belly with a heavy force. The troll bellowed in an incomprehensible language, writhing in pain. Unlike bolts that would only pierce its skin, this spear went through the muscle, causing immense pain even to the regenerative troll. The troll, attempting to pull out the spear stuck in its belly, ended up breaking it. However, as if it didn't matter, it grabbed its club and began charging towards Johann. The warhorse began to frantically buck. The malice of the monster was too much for even a well-trained horse. It was only Johann's strong thigh muscles that kept it under control. Even if the troll was fast, it couldn't be faster than a horse. But Johann underestimated them. Not the troll, but the knights. Your opponent is me, monster. The brave elf knight, Leon Dial, didn't think of retreating but instead charged forward. The shining sword swung, splattering blood from the troll's thigh. The faces of the elf knights, who had never been able to strike first due to the troll's frenzy, lit up with color. Of course, curses naturally escaped Johann's mouth. You! They think that Johann had come to catch it together. But Johann had only intended to attract its attention and then escape. The troll's superficial wounds quickly healed. Unlike the piercing spear wound, such slashing injuries were not much damage to the troll. The troll, already enraged, and further irritated by the elf knight's pestering, unleashed a furious blow with its club. Leon Dial, bold as ever, didn't roll to evade but raised his longsword to deflect the attack. Unbeknownst to Johann, this was one of the secret techniques of the Dial family, It was a powerful counterattack move that could block and return any overhead strike. However, the troll was unexpectedly cunning. Seeing the knight raise his sword for some action, it immediately stopped its attack and countered with a front kick. The elf knight was struck squarely in the chest, spewing blood as he tumbled. Damn it! Johann, cursing, leaped off his horse and plunged into the battlefield. Given the chaos, the troll prioritized finishing off the elf knights over pursuing him. One of the three had fallen, and it was only a matter of time for the other two. Karamaf. No need to hold back the troll. Just make sure Fern doesn't escape. Even if Karamaf asked, it would be something the troll could easily ignore. Instead, it was better to watch the horse to prevent it from running away, ready to mount in a hurry if necessary. As Johann dismounted and approached, the troll immediately went on the defensive, instinctively sensing him as the most threatening presence there. Thanks to this, the elf knights could save their lives. Withdraw to the side with Sir Leon. But it's too much for you alone. Ignoring the response, Johann charged at the troll. Springing off the ground with agility, he seemed to grow larger in the troll's eyes. Normally, the troll would have counterattacked immediately, but it still remembered the afterimage of the previous spear attack. Unconsciously, it raised its arm to protect its vulnerable head. That exposed the appetizing target of the troll's torso under its raised arm. It was the same situation as before with Karamaf. Johann took a deep breath and swung his longsword with all his might, realizing too late that a thrust would have been more lethal against the troll. A crude sound of flesh being struck echoed as the hilt of the longsword shattered and the blade stuck firmly in the troll's torso. But the situation was different from Karamaf. While Karamaf's thin plate armor concealed a frail body, once the troll's outer skin was torn, thick, hard muscles and fat formed a protective layer underneath. The tough, coarse mass firmly gripped the blade. The longsword, reaching the ribs, could move no further. Chapter 36.2. It seemed twice as painful as before. The troll swung its club at Johann's head with hatred and venom in its eyes. With the longsword already broken, Johann discarded any hesitation and swiftly dodged backward. The spot where he had just been standing shattered, sending chills down his spine. Grateful for having prepared multiple longswords, Johann drew another one. Though his attack failed, it had an effect. Two weapons were now stuck in the troll's body, too deeply embedded for its regenerative abilities to push out. They needed to be pulled out manually. Of course, he didn't plan on giving it the time to do so. Johann feigned a charge. The troll, grinding its teeth, kicked to prevent him from getting close, but it was just a bluff by Johann. Realizing it had been tricked, the troll roared in frustration. Bring me my weapon. We must aid Sir Johann. My lord, you're injured. Shut up. Can't you bring it immediately? I'll cut you down. No. My lord. Better kill me instead. Johann found the chatter of the distant elf knights and his men even more annoying. Just buzz off, you sons of bitches. Doesn't seem like an uncatchable one, though. Johann calmed his anger and thought hard. The most threatening strength of the troll was its unique defensive capability and regenerative power. It was no ordinary challenge, as the creature not only rarely got hurt but also healed quickly. However, with Johann's superhuman strength, it was possible to inflict damage. Continuously attacking would eventually wear the troll down and weaken it. Moreover, the situation was in Johann's favor. The Holy Knight's Order, experienced in hunting trolls, would soon arrive. But the troll, with two weapons stuck in its belly, seemed to have a different idea. Preferring quick resolutions, the troll charged at Johann with a roar as soon as it realized he was just buying time. It felt like a massive boulder was flying at him, but Johann dived low. Being intimidated by size was a thing of the past for him. Dodging to the side, he precisely aimed and stabbed at the troll's leg this time. If the creature kept attacking despite being stabbed in the torso, targeting its leg seemed a better strategy. Johann thought, but a too tempting opportunity arose. His longsword deeply pierced the troll's thigh muscle, forcing one of its knees to the ground. Simultaneously, the longsword broke apart. The remaining blade, of course, stayed in the troll's body. By this point, even the elf knights, overwhelmed by the heat of battle, realized something was off. How can any creature be so monstrously strong? Give Sir Johann a weapon. Quickly. Why yes. Thinking they could finally end the troll's life, the excited elf knights shouted. Normally, knights wouldn't lend their weapons to others, but they didn't hesitate to throw theirs to Johann. But there was no time for Johann to leisurely receive a weapon while fighting the troll. Without a chance to draw a weapon, he pounced behind the kneeling troll. A strong kick to its back made the troll lose balance and fall. Johann stepped on the troll's back, gripping one of its arms. One of the slaves, in shock, thought irreverently, Was this a wrestling match against a troll? That was something you'd do when you were too close to swing a weapon, not something feasible against a troll. The troll, encountering an opponent who dared to engage in a physical struggle for the first time, was bewildered. When Johann tried to pull its arm, the troll, incredulous, resisted. It planned to throw this contemptible human off and stand up to kill him. But it didn't break free. Instead, its arm was pulled even more. Johann was expressionless, but inwardly surprised. Just like the elf knights and his subordinates, who looked at him as if he was insane, Johann regretted grabbing and pulling the troll's arm. Strangely, in battle, his instinct and reason worked separately. Logically, he thought, but his instinct boldly went ahead. Especially with such actions. The troll, losing the struggle, thrashed around, but if it couldn't win with strength in this situation, there was little it could do. Gradually, its arm was pulled back, and a strange sound started emanating from its thick shoulder. Oh, oh, oh. My God. A sight where even those who weren't particularly devout called upon the name of the deity. Muscles tore and skin ripped with a sound, followed by splattering blood. Then, the troll let out the loudest scream of the day. Johann felt a tingling loss of strength in the muscles of his arms and legs. That was the effort he had exerted to defeat the creature. Johann, having thrown one of the troll's arms aside, shouted, "Weapon! Sir, catch!" One of the subordinates quickly regained their senses and hurled a weapon towards him. The voice was filled with reverence. After witnessing such a fight, no one could face Johann with a clear head. Johann raised his sword, aiming at the troll's thick neck. Even a troll with great regenerative abilities couldn't survive with an arm torn off by sheer force. The creature was unconscious from pain and blood loss. Like an executioner beheading a prisoner, Johann swung his sword in a calm and orderly manner. It was hard to believe he had just been in such a brawl. The sword glinted, and its well-forged steel blade shattered the troll's neck bone. Then, belatedly, the Saint Aina Holy Knights Order paladins arrived on the battlefield, carrying blazing torches. "Everyone, stand back. We will handle this. It's already been taken care of."